Hey there, welcome to the More Miles podcast. I'm Lauren,
I'm Michelle.
I'm Scott.
and we are the More Miles Run Coaching team. We are here today with a special guest expert, Mr. Steve Moore, who is the owner of Run More, which is a brick and mortar store located in Westminster, Maryland, as well as an online retailer and also a highly successful YouTube channel. Steve, thanks for being here with us this morning.
Wow, that gives me lots of extra bravado that I don't know if I'm warranted. I don't know, I'm a successful YouTube person, but anyway, I'm Steve Moore, and I appreciate so much you inviting me to be on this morning.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here. We are here to talk all things shoes today. And the heart of this episode is going to be about running shoes, everything that runners need to know as they are shopping for shoes. But before we get into any of that, Steve, we want to talk a little bit about you and how you got into running, how you got into the shoe business. So let's maybe start with, where did running first enter your life? Have you been a runner your whole life?
Yeah, I'm very lucky that I found running very young. I had a neighbor. My neighbor growing up was, if anybody is sort of familiar with the DC area, was Sue Palka, who was the longtime Fox 5 weather lady, and she was retired maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but she'd been there for like 30 some years on Fox News, and her husband ran marathons. And like when I was like 6, 7 years old, I would run a little bit around the neighborhood with him, and like he was that guy that you would go out and go for runs, and and it was a really cool thing to see. And I was like, that's something that I want to be a part of. I like that whole culture. And, I became sort of fascinated and started doing little runs around my neighborhood and such. And then really took the big leap joining a cross country as a freshman in high school. But I had definitely been sort of running prior to that. It was different time because there wasn't races like there are now. There wasn't neighborhood, like I think of things like the Main Street Mile, which is a big event here in Westminster that, it's open for younger people to find running. We just didn't have that back in my day. So, you were very much a very sort of on your own on that. And then I found high school cross country, and it took my love to a different level. But I knew very, very young that running would be in my life in some capacity forever. Like I just sort of had this, it's wherever I go, this will be involved in my life. And I've been lucky to find that young, and it's sort of obviously stayed with me.
So, how did you get from high school cross country to the distances that you cover now? And like, how did that evolve in your adulthood? I
Just
guess.
as far as my running goes, yeah, like I ran high school, and I got to run collegiately, and there was I loved running, and it got to the point by the end of college that you kind of get a little burnt out of racing. And I'm sure we've all had those times in our lives where like you can run and love running all you want, but sometimes you just don't want to race all the time. And I just kind of got to that point where like I needed a break from that every Saturday and Tuesday dual meets and Saturdays and all that stuff, where I just kind of wanted to run for me. So like for a while I was just running, sort of like what I'm doing now, is just running a good bit of mileage with friends with no real pressure to do things, and then it's just sort of increase my mileage. And then you start to get to that, like, well, I can't necessarily break some of my 5K times where I did when I was in college. So the idea of still being able to, when you have that desire to compete, but you want to be able to maybe have those personal records and such, it's only logical that you start increasing the distances and such. So just sort of that nice trend of, well, I'm racing a little bit longer, so now I'm running a little bit longer. And to do that, maybe I should change the terrain. So I should do some more trail stuff. So it all sort of started organically came together. And then the people that you surround yourselves with certainly help with that too. Having friends that go out there like Scott and do some long mile stuff, or my friends Pat and them that we go out and do long trail stuff with, that like keeps your mind active and your desire to do different things kind of evolving as you go. So I've been super lucky with that.
So currently as a runner, what kind of races, distances, or are you competing in now? What are some of your favorites now?
Well, I'm actually getting ready for it's one of those weird things of running is I'm getting ready for a 5K. I have a 5K in 3 weeks, and it's so funny because now most of us we're doing marathons and such, but it does just kind of, it's that nice reminder of like running can be as hard as you want it to be, and like you go tell somebody who just runs an 800 that it's just an 800. I mean, that is just a grueling race. So I have a 5K coming this later this month. That is it's an industry race that I do every year in Texas, and it's really fun because it's at a running conference. So there's like pros in it. it's a Thursday morning 5K, and like the one year I ran it, I think like 13 high won the 5K, and there's no prizes, there's no nothing. It's just show up and run it. So I'm hoping to run a nice 5K there. I haven't broken 17 as a master, and I've been right on that cusp. So I'm hoping that I can kind of do that later this month just to check that off, because as we get older, that little foot speed stuff goes away. And then I'm doing a 50K in February, and my friend and I are talking about doing a 100-miler in the spring. So we'll kind of see. I think I kind of want to get a couple of these shorter ones out of my way, and then go back to doing the long stuff. And I know I want to get 100 under my belt. I know you've got a couple, Lauren, and I definitely want to try to do that as myself.
Which one are you looking at?
We were talking about doing one in Texas. My friend just got married, and we were looking at one in I think it was the Rocky Raccoon, I believe, in Texas.
Yeah.
And his wedding and his honeymoon is supposed to be in Maui, and so there was where the fires were. So a lot of his plans and such are sort of up in the air. So he's like, well, I'm either going to go on my honeymoon to Maui, or we'll go run 100 miles in Texas. So they still haven't decided where in the island of what they wanted anyway. So kind of waiting on him to decide. So in the meantime, I've just been trying to keep my mileage semi-high. So if I need to pivot and pick it up even more, at least I have a nice strong base right now.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Just wing it as it comes up.
Yeah. I mean, I recently moved, and I'm right by our big network of trails here, Hashua. So like it actually is really convenient for me to get up and go and hit the trails more in the mornings and such, and like continue to have a base without having to like make tons of sacrifices to do that, which is nice. Besides getting up at the crack of dawn, which we all probably do anyway.
So Steve, tell us where Run More came about. How did the store come about? The thought process, the vision, the dream. We're thankful that you're here in our town. So walk us through that.
Going back to sort of like, I knew running would always be in my life. After college, I like coached for a little bit, and like there were just different times in my life where like I needed running to be a bigger part of it. It's sort of always in the background of my life, but like I rely, just things in life, stressors come up, and you find you need more miles, or family struggles, and you need to focus on something because it just gives your whole brain and your energy a better vibe. And I just kind of was in a job that I didn't love, and I knew I wanted to do something still in running. It was just like this overarching thing in my life of just wanting to be involved in this community. And my wife and I are both sort of have that little entrepreneur spirit, and we had always wanted to open a restaurant. Before we had kids, we almost opened a winery in Kansas. We had gone very far down the pipeline of opening this winery. And it kind of fell through, but we'd always at one point wanted to open a restaurant. That had been our goal. And when my son was born, we were in the hospital, and I needed shoes, and there was nothing around, Carroll County that had any place to go get real running shoes. You could go to a Dick's and such like that, but even I like talking to people about shoes. Like I love geeking out about shoes. So like you just can't get that in places around here. And so one of those things that you step back and you look at it, you go, all the little dots are pointing to doing this. I've read Runner's Worlds from, cover to cover, and watched track, and just very involved with it, but not knowing where to put all that energy. And just that always wanted to be involved running. And now I have a need that I have shoes, and my wife is heavily sedated because she just had a kid. So I'm going to pitch this idea to her while we're in Carroll Hospital. And that's what happened. And I was friends with you, Scott, at the time. And I think I kept it under my hat for like 3 months while I was sort of figuring out if it was even physically possible. Like, I had another job, I had another kid, and trying to make all that work. But it was just a desire to do something that was in the running world that I could make my own. And I kind of felt like I had been acquiring all this information over years, and it just gave me an outlet to do something with it. And it's the hardest and yet most rewarding thing outside of my family that I've been able to do.
And keep me honest with the math, but you're coming up on your 10-year anniversary next year.
Yeah.
Right? Yep.
Yeah. 10 years next year.
Wow.
It's been a really fun and challenging thing. And I look back at just how, everybody says that like, oh, it's so grateful to be here. But like, Scott, you remember those early years were very lean years. When opening the store and you come in and say like, I have these great ideas and I have this great background and such, but it really was a hard process, not just in funding the business, but, if you look back those early years, we didn't carry any big brands out there. Like, I was under the assumption that when you open a shop or a restaurant that you can kind of do whatever you want, but it was really crude realization when you would pick up the phone and call a big brand and say, I'm opening this running store. There's nothing like it out here. And I've got this experience in coaching and running and college and times and this. And they say, that's great, but you're never going to make it. Your town's too small. So we're just not going to work with you. So like we worked with very small brands and really like bootstrap it up, couldn't get a loan, couldn't get a rental place. It was like I think that's one of the reasons why, like, when every time we hit a milestone, like how much it means to us, because like, I think if you look at it now, it's very easy to walk in and say, well, this place is really cool. It's got this great stuff. You must have kind of started in this way, but like those early years of, if you sold a pair of shoes in a day, it was a pretty good day. You could sit there all day and have one person come in or someone who walk in and say, I'm here for a Brooks Ghost. And you'd say, that's awesome, but Brooks won't sell to me because they said there's no runners in Carroll County. So I have a Pearl Izumi, which you've never heard of and no longer makes shoes, but this is who will work with me. So we're going to make it work. And so like that, those grinds of getting that going to be at a point where we're coming up on 10 years is pretty amazing. And it's really only the places because of people like, Michelle and Scott and the people in the local town who were coming to us early when we were first opening with kind of believing, I think, where we were going without necessarily seeing the products that they're used to seeing in a running shop as we sort of built the trust from the manufacturers to then come aboard in years 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, your old shop was really small under the yoga studio. Like it was
tiny.
It was so fun though. Yeah, it's cool to see where you come from there. Like, how much you've grown. It's really cool.
It's it was 1,200 in the first year. I still worked my other full-time job. So I was working, got to that point of I was in sales. And so I would do that in the day. And then I had a college kid during the daytime. Then I worked nights and Saturdays and Sundays. So it was like almost a full year of 7 days a week of doing 2 jobs between doing those. And I finally was like, I'm either going to have to quit my other job and do this full time, or I can't do both. And then we started timing races and I was starting to coach a little bit too. And I was like, I've just got too many things I'm juggling. And I kind of had that like, well, I could always find another sales job, but I might not ever have, even though it's tiny and I only sell weird brand shoes and I only have a tiny amount of inventory, but I want to try to make this work. And so we took that plunge and it was really, really hard for those first years after I quit my job. But it makes every one of these little milestones, like I'd never, ever take it for granted because we were so close. And, like every small business, we're always so close to things going catastrophic, but especially those early days on of like going and hosting a pub run where like we would do group runs and we still do. And like everybody gets a free beer at our group runs. Well, like the free beer comes because, we pay the free beer. We buy everybody's first beer, but we were so broke those first years. Like I would literally be taking money out of the cash register from sales that day to go pay for the beer and be under our daily bank to open the next day, hoping that we would sell a pair of shoes to make up for the money I took out of the register to buy a celebratory beer just to bribe people to come into the store. Because otherwise it was like we said, you just tumbleweeds would blow through there because we were in a tiny shop with weird brand shoes and we didn't have an online store and nobody would really want to kind of play with Run More. So we've kind of just grinded away, and it's really kind of I every time I walk in the back of that store to see where it is now to where it was, like it gives me the feels every single day I walk in there.
So at this point, you carry all brands, at least in your online store. So Scott and Michelle live local to you, shop in the store often. I don't. So when I shop with you, I shop online, and there is not a brand I know of that you don't carry in your online store. So I think that's kind of where we want to start is, okay, so you carry everything. When runners are shopping for a shoe, let's dig into that and how we go from this huge inventory of every brand to what works for that person. So there are lots of different types of shoes. We've got your minimalist all the way up to your stability or neutral style. What are the different kinds of shoes, just in a general sense, when people are looking to shop?
Well, we've actually recently rearranged our shoe wall because, sort of to your point, people would come in and they would pick up sort of the way my shoe wall was closest to, like the shoes closest to the door where the shoes people picked up first. Makes sense. It's the first thing they'd come to. And so we would have sort of our speed category toward the wall. And we would have people that go, oh, here's a carbon plated Hoka shoe. I've heard this brand is good. I walk 3 days a week. I would like to walk in these shoes. So, trying to arranged things to make people understand the nuances of shoes. So we've rearranged things to make it almost more like a beginner into more like cushioned and stable and such. But for the most part, what we carry at the shop is we have stuff from we call like lightweight trainers, which are more on the minimal side a lot of times, that don't have a whole lot of stability, into what like our bread and butter is our mid cushion stability stuff, which is like your everyday trainer that has a little bit of guidance to it. You have your mid cushion neutral shoes, which are like a Brooks Ghost, which would be considered a everyday trainer without any type of push and pull from any type of stability. Moving into like the heavier high cushion neutral, high cushion stability, into like a walking shoe to like it. We're actually even now seeing performance neutral stuff. So it's almost a hard answer to a question to answer, because it continues to morph and change, which quite honestly, going back to one of your first things when we first started, was like why you would come to a shop like us is because it constantly is changing. We had a meeting this week. I'll pull back the curtain on how it works in Run Specialty Shops. Is this week I saw all of winter 2024 shoes. So I know exactly what Hoka's coming up with until January of 2025. So they come in and they say, here's all the new shoes that we're making, and how many do you think you can sell of this? And you write out your orders week by week through the entire second half of next year. It's a painstakingly tedious, but it's an important part of what we do. So they've now come up with, like, if you consider that you have like a mid cushion shoe and a max cushion shoe, they've now added a category of like a 2/3 max cushion shoe. So like if you don't want a max cushion shoe, but you want a mid cushion shoe, you want like a pretty, now we have a category there. So we just keep adding different layers onto this shoe, which it can be confusing for the consumer for sure, especially because some brands like Brooks, for example, they've started doing this thing where they'll take a color, like a shoe color, and they'll make a ton of different models in it. So you could pick up a shoe and they'll be like, I see this exact color in 4 different shoes, and they're priced different. They like the actual, what they do is different. And unless you're going to go through and Google search it's really hard to kind of know the differences between them. And I think everybody has such good technology that there's not that many bad shoes out there. It's just finding the shoe that's right for you. The sort of good shoe, bad shoe isn't as important anymore. It's like, just kind of get through all the weeds and figure out where you need to be in a shoe and find that one and sort of find that, because it can get very murky out there, especially as we're adding new layers of shoes to it. So like when you come into a shop like ours, you guys know we ask a ton of questions. Like we're kind of annoyingly asking questions, and even if they seem benign, like in my head I'm starting to think about what to do with you. Just a lot like, oh, you're new to running? Where do you go? You go to the park? You go to the track? You go to the treadmill? Like I'm just trying to start to narrow down where I can go with people. I think we have this nice scanner at my store where it gives some good measurements, and that information is good. But a lot of times what I'm using that scanner for is to pepper you with questions, and people don't realize it, but I'm basically interviewing them. And it's, oh, so did you ever have plantar fasciitis? What foot was the plantar fasciitis on? Did you wear a custom orthotic? Did you like the custom orthotic? Did you wear shoes that were minimal at the time? Do you walk around barefoot? Like, just starting to get a picture in my head of the type of runner this person is, because I can get some information from their foot scan, and I can get some information from them walking through the machine and seeing their pattern and such like that. But so much of the good information is just buried in somebody's head, and you just kind of have to keep getting it out. And most people will come in, and if you don't ask the questions, I'm great, I can run in anything, no problem. And then you dig in a little bit. It's like, oh, you had reconstructive surgery on your knee. That information would have been helpful. But you can't get that on the scan. So you have to kind of pepper people with questions. And that helps us sort of take our big search down to a little bit more. The thing that we've seen more in the last year is, and I don't know if it's a social media influencer type thing or just people are just looking for sources of information, but we get more people that come in now that say, my neighbor has this shoe, so I should buy this shoe. And we're trying to talk people off the ledge of that. And like, to use a brand as an example, like Hoka is now our biggest brand that we carry inside the shop. Hoka is also our most returned brand, because people will come in and say, my neighbor says to get Hoka, so I should get a Hoka shoe. And it's like, well, that might not be right for you. Or my neighbor says I should get a Hoka Bondi, so I'm here for a Hoka Bondi. And I'm like, well, yeah, but you need something different than they have. So we should focus on you and what your needs are, and not what you saw online or not what neighbor said you should get, because that's just not that. There's a reason why I don't carry one shoe. There's a million shoes out there. So let's focus on your needs and not what's sort of being pushed to you as what should be your shoe. it's a much more personalized experience, and which is why like coming into a brick and mortar store, I think makes a lot of sense. And I think one of the things I'm most proud of is like I get these data points from all running stores across the country that it's involved. Like basically all of our data is shared anonymously with all the other running stores, and there's a company that compiles it all and sends out reports. We're one of the lowest return rate stores in the country, and it's I think it's because we ask a lot of questions. I think it's because when somebody comes in and says like I just want this, for the most part it's like, oh, you're here for this shoe, I want you to try these 3 shoes. Even though you've had success with this shoe, there might be something else, and we should explore it a little bit and make sure that you do need that exact same shoe, because maybe something has changed and we could do a little bit better. And so like I think our way of doing that at least limits returns and hopefully increases customers' appreciation for the shoe and keeps them healthy and active. That's always the goal anyways.
So what do you do? I guess when you have somebody who comes in who has been running, they have some background information to give you. Like I run this many miles a week, I get pain in my knees or here or there, whatever. What do you do for a beginner who's like brand new to running, has no clue? They're probably like massively intimidated walking into the store. Like, how do you handle that?
Yeah, that's we call that the I'm not a runner, but that's like we hear that every day. I'm not a runner, but like there's like almost an apology of like I'm so sorry to waste your time because I'm new to running and I don't know anything, and like that is my favorite person. Like I love that because I get excited for somebody's journey. Like we're high-fiving them along the way, and like that's so great. You got a goal. You're joining Girls on the Run. You're going to do it with your kid. That's so amazing. Like we're the hype squad for that kind of person, because I think it is intimidating for somebody to come in there. For somebody who has no background of running, or maybe their goal is to lose 10 pounds, like that is sort of a big first step of going into a running store. And, we really try to make sure that when they come in that like we are as least intimidating as possible. And so we put them on our scanner, and I love to look at old people's, I like not old people, I like to look at old shoes from people, old people's shoes just laying around from the 30s and 40s. I like to look at shoes because it really kind of helps me with their tread line. But typically on somebody who is newer to running, we typically gravitate more towards more stable options. And so when we're talking about, I'm going to move this down because I did a bad job. We're talking about more of our stable stuff. The world of stability shoes has morphed so much in the last couple of years on how the stability is done that most people that are still a neutral person, they can get away with a shoe that's stable. Because I'm doing my hand thing here. Stable shoes back when we first opened were really for most people that were rolling in, and it would push them back to neutral, right? You're flat-footed, you're coming back here. And so if you were somebody who was already here and we put you in a stable shoe, you're now going here. You're now supinating, you're now putting on pressure on the outside of your foot. You could absolutely overcorrect somebody in the old way of stability model shoes back when we first opened. In the last 5 years or so, brands have started adjusting shoes where the stability was actually on both sides of the foot. So if you were somebody who went this way, you could pop you in this way. If you went inside, get you neutral. One foot, correct it without affecting the other one. So they basically customized stability in shoes and made it so each foot had its own set of stability, so it would kind of adjust independently. So you can now put more people in stability shoes that don't need it. So we tend to gravitate more towards stable models for people that are new, because as we find a lot of time as people are increasing mileage and distance and such, is sometimes even if they have good form, things can just get a little bit wonky, and some aches and pains can be avoided a little bit more by just stabilizing your heel and keeping everything more vertical, because that's sort of a lot of times where things get wonky is if we're putting too much pressure one way or the other, heel, toe, back, left, right, is now we're using our heel as a brake as opposed to, trying to keep our momentum forward, or we're using our arch as like our landing spot. And that's not really what it's meant to do. So like most of what I'm trying to do is just to get people, I say like my goal is when you come back in 500 miles, if I look on the tread line of your shoe, like we're much more in the middle of the shoe. That's sort of what I would like to do. And so how can we achieve that? And so what I like to do a lot of times is I'll get some measurements, I'll get some history, and I might say, we're going to try some shoes. If you've never done this whole experience, we're going to try shoes with the highest drop, where the heel is as high to the toe as it can be. And we're going to try everything from high to low. And there's no right or wrong answer. You've never done running. This is brand new to you. So let's start high and let's take a scientific approach to this. Let's have you put on a high drop shoe that's a neutral and a stable and go for a walk. Go for a run on my treadmill. I keep my store wide open so people can bop around a little bit in there and feel the difference on your body of what it feels like having a high drop versus a mid drop versus a semi mid drop to a low drop. See if something more gravitates towards your body. Try a high on one foot and a low on the other one. I think the more you get a chance when you're a new runner to try a bunch of stuff on in a place that's warm and welcoming, I think it's a much better experience, and you'll be able to find the shoe that's right for you a little bit better that way. And that was a long answer.
That's a good answer.
That was a great answer.
Told you I'm a yapper, so if I yap, just give me a middle finger.
So, Steve, I remember, and I think you probably remember the days of East Bay. Remember that magazine?
Oh, yeah,
where you
absolutely.
open it up, and that's where I got all of my shoes. So I didn't grow up with anybody that actually knew anything about shoes that I could talk to. What I've seen in just the technology in shoes, right? And you can go from, when I say technology, I'm talking everything from the stability of just a basic shoe all the way up to super shoes, right? And everything in between. Can you talk a little bit about how that's kind of come into you as a business owner and in that industry, and how, number one, that you educate, the consumer about that, and two, is there a need, right, for some of that technology for everyday runners, or what athletes and runners could benefit from that technology?
And probably because me and you are a little more old school. I don't know how. I'm still on the fence of how I feel about all of the technological advancements in shoes, because now, selfishly and you look at the times now and you look what people do, and it's almost like our sport has morphed. It's like taking a wooden tennis racket back from the day and trying to compete. Arthur Ashe versus whatever Federer. Like it's the same sport, but it's not quite the same sport. The biggest advancement that we have seen as far as like on the advancement of shoes is the midsole material. It's not the carbon plate. The carbon plate is great, but really from what the research that's coming out now that we've had a couple of years is that the advancement has really come in the geometry of the shoe and the midsole technology. So like those supercritical foams that they're calling it, they're charged rubbers, they're ways to make stuff more bouncy. So once they figured out that, okay, if we take a shoe and now instead of making it stiff in the middle, we built it on a curve so it rolls with your foot. Now we've kind of made it more of a wave. Okay, well now if we put a material in there that compresses and pops you forward, now we're putting a rocket shoe. Now we're really putting like a rocket ship on your shoe. Mm-hmm. It's nice, but I think that it has become too much of what people are leaning on for an everyday trainer. I think like it's a weird conversation to have with somebody who's new to running, because people will come in and they will say, I understand there's like a $250 shoe out there that I can run in all the time that's going to make me faster. Like these are conversations I have pretty much on the regular, and it's like, well, why can't I train in a carbon plated racing shoe? Why can't I do all of my, if this is a fast shoe, shouldn't I just run in it all the time? And I always equate it to just the way we used to run back in the day of like, if you're swinging a baseball bat, you want to have that weighted donut on it, and then when you race, it feels that much easier. Like I always use the baseball analogy. So you have a baseball bat with a weighted donut on it in the warm-up cage. So you're swinging it; it's heavy. You take the weighted donut off, the bat feels that much easier. I kind of like training in shoes that are heavier and more traditional, so that when I go to a race day, I feel that massive difference between what I've been running in and what I'm racing in, and I think it doesn't feel as special if you're running in your racing shoes all the time. And I think you also give yourself a false sense of confidence of where you are as a runner if the shoes if the shoes are doing all the work for you. It's using a downhill mile as your mile PR. It's not quite the same thing. Yes, you're covering the distance, but it's not quite the same way of doing it. So we almost talk people off the ledge a little bit more on some of the super shoe technology for trainers. Some of the midsole stuff we're seeing in everyday trainers is evolving a little bit to be a little more easier to bite-sized package for somebody to train into, where it's not so quite aggressive. Like we're seeing some blends of like super shoes and EVA midsoles and such, so that it can be more of a performance trainer that you could race in, but not necessarily a racing shoe that you're training in. I think that the direction that we're going to continue to see go, though, is that shoes are going to all become wearing these supercritical foams. I think the midsole materials that we grew up with, just regular EVA midsoles and such, I bet in 5 years it's going to be almost obsolete, because that's what the consumer wants, is they want that sort of speedy shoe. But I don't necessarily love the direction that it's going.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So to expand on that just a little bit, I guess this is sort of a two-part question. Should in a given week, let's say it maybe an intermediate or an advanced runner who is doing multiple different types of workouts per week. You've got your easy runs, but you've also got a speed session or a tempo session, a long run. Should runners be training in a different shoe for different types of workouts like that? I mean, I have a coach opinion. What's your opinion though, as a shoe guy?
Well, it's hard as a shoe guy because in my world, like for me personally, yeah, I have a bunch of different shoes for what I do. Like I'm very, and maybe that's one of the back of the recesses of my brain of why I open the stores, because I love having a bunch of running shoes at my disposal. But for a lot of people, it can be a costly endeavor to go down that road. In an ideal world, yeah, I think you do. And I kind of like, I just started a blog maybe 3 months ago where I kind of go through the week of what I'm training for and what shoes I'm training in to kind of give exactly that perspective. Today was my long run, so I purposely sort of wore my heavier shoes because I'm trying to build some strength in here. So I wore my Hoka Stinson 7s for a 3-hour trail run because I wanted to get something that's not so easy because I'm plodding along, and that's not what the goal of the race should. My runs shouldn't be to get through it as fast as I can. It's to get through the distance and build strength. So I don't necessarily want a fast shoe on that kind of run, and sort of breaking down the thought process between what I'm racing, what runs I'm doing, and why I'm pulling a specific shoe. So like in my arsenal right now, I mean, I have a million shoes, but on a given week right now, I've been averaging like on a personal level, like 45 to 50 miles a week. And I run in 5 different pairs of shoes a week, I would say on average. So I really am constantly tinkering with the shoes I'm wearing in, because I'm running on the track with Scott one morning. I'm running on the trail with Pat one morning, or I'm doing speed work one day. So I'm constantly rotating those in. So I do think for the average consumer, at the very minimum, you really need at least 2 pairs of shoes. You kind of need like a faster, if you only could get 2 pairs of shoes, and that's sort of the nice conversation I have with people if they're like trying to take the next little step, is introduce a second pair of shoes. And not just because I sell shoes, but it does make a big difference having sort of a faster shoe in your everyday shoe. Not to mention, I'm sure you guys know the durability will change when you add a second pair of shoes in. And that's another like new, we get asked a lot of like, how long should a shoe last, which can also be kind of a tough question to answer, because it's, where are you running? Are you running on a gravel road, or are you on your treadmill? Do you run once a week, or do you run every day? Because that affects your shoe. But the nice way we always explain it is the inside of your shoe gets flat as you run, and it takes longer to decompress, like a Nerf squishy ball. You squish down on it and it expands, but over time, it takes longer to expand. So if you rotate, you're giving it more chance to expand, and thus it will last longer because it doesn't get flat down so fast. So by incorporating at least one other shoe in your week, I think it really is a good indication of, or a good like foray or stepping your toe into like the advancement of, now you have a speed shoe, a race shoe, a long distance shoe, a junk mile shoe, and a trail shoe. I mean, everybody should have a good trail shoe. But I do think it's important to have multiple shoes in your rotation and not lean so heavy on sort of like the go fast shoes to do everything. And sort of looking at, like, I look at my week in advance and I know exactly what days and where, and I'm pretty good about like laying everything out for my run in advance. So I even know, like, today's Sunday, like I'll know what shoe I'm wearing on Friday because I know what my run on Friday is supposed to be. And so I have a shoe for that goal because I know what my goal of that run should be.
Yes. Do you work in with your shoe rotation? Like we talked about the super shoes. Do you work those into your rotation during your training cycle at all? Because nothing new on race day, but how do you suggest working those super shoes into that rotation without, wearing them too much, if there is a such thing as too much,
Yeah. I have a rule of thumb for me personally. It used to be 25 miles is I didn't want to start a race that like a marathon if a shoe had more than 25 miles on it, which is kind of dumb. Then after that, it'd become a workout shoe or something like that. But like for my last marathon, I was kind of between 2 shoes, and I wore each of them for an 8-mile marathon paced run. So I went out and did like a threshold type run to kind of get a vibe of how that shoe would feel performance wise on the marathon. Mm-hmm. So I can kind of see how it's played in. But that's all I did, and it was like 8 miles before I raced in it. Typically, you'd want to probably do at least 20 miles or so in a run before you break it in, because you don't want to go into race day on something fresh like that. That's where the one thing that I have kind of made suggestions to people that are at that level, or like both financially and competitive wise, is that you can find shoes that are semi close to your race shoe, so you can kind of get a feel for it. Like Like Ultra, for example, has a shoe called the Vanish Carbon, and they also have a shoe called the Vanish Tempo. They're pretty close to each other. One has a plate, one doesn't. One is meant for more like everyday running, and one is meant for racing. But a lot of the characteristics are the same. So you can practice in the tempo and then kind of feel pretty good about trying on the carbon plated shoe for race day and feel like, I know how this shoe should perform. I know how the width feels. I know how the drop is. I'm accustomed to all those things, and I shouldn't worry too much about on race day. But I do always try to get at least a run or two in a pair of shoes. That's going to be for my personal race. But that's how I found is doing stuff at race pace in those shoes.
Yeah,
Okay.
Steve, I've rotated my shoes for years, and this was probably back in college, and I remember this number just sticking out into my head. Is I was always told running shoes last for 500 miles. You should change your tires every 500 miles. That's obviously, with technology and things the way have changed, I'm sure that that's not accurate today. What is the truth, or is there a truth, like in terms of how long a shoe should last?
So they've actually changed it in our industry now. They say 350 to 500 miles, and it's interesting is when I first opened the average shoe at my store cost $115. That's just what and that's what a mid cushion neutral shoe. And like all brands will make a mid cushion neutral shoe, whether it's a Brooks Ghost, a New Balance 880, a Hoka Clifton, whatever. All these popular shoes in that category. That's like the average price of shoe. So now the average is about $145. But you're not getting any more expectancy. And in fact, the manufacturers now have taken it back to 350 to 500 because that's exactly what we were told back in the day was that 500 miles. It's really kind of hard to calculate that, though. And I think the reason why they've started changing the numbers around a little bit is it really is a tough number to look at. It's not like it runs out of gas like your car.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how you use it, because that person who runs every day in it it's gonna die on them faster than somebody who takes it in pristine care. And again, using like the asking where somebody runs in if you're on a gravel road versus running on your treadmill, the gravel road person on something that has a lot of exposed foam is going to eat that shoe up much faster than somebody who's running in their controlled basement like that. So you're kind of having to use a little wider range. But it is always interesting to me that we've seen so much technological advancements in it, but I have yet to have a brand come out and say, I've got 1,000-mile shoe. We now have Adidas with a $500 shoe that they say will give you one race. So we're kind of going the opposite way, right? Like the focus has been so much on like, let's make sure we can make these shoes as fast as light, but nobody's putting really a lot of energy into let's make a shoe that will last you 1,000 miles or 2,000 miles. And it would be nice to see that because there's been so much talk about the sustainability of running shoes and some of the programs that are being designed to kind of help take some of the dye out and shipping with the making. New Balance has been talking for years about getting rid of boxes and sending shoes in recyclable bags and things like that. But nobody's coming out and saying, and maybe it's because the shoe manufacturers want you to keep buying shoes. But it'd be really nice if a brand came out and said, we've got this shoe and it's $250, but we guarantee you'll get 1,000 miles out of it. That would be nice to see. But for now, 350 is sort of the rule of thumb that everybody's been using.
So I'll save this question for later. I have a shoe nerd question for you about the Normal brand that Kilian Jornet has started coming out with along the lines of making a more sustainable, longer lasting shoe. But so if 350 is about the range for your daily trainer that we're saying right now, does a super shoe generally get you the same amount of mileage, or is that have a shorter, longer lifespan with the carbon plate and the different foam? And
so they're coming out and saying that the midsole that we're seeing on some of the super shoes is supposed to be more durable. I don't necessarily know if that's the case. It's really hard, and there's only so much that I could do on my end to sort of to break down a shoe to see how it goes. But on my personal levels, I don't think that you're getting any more life outside of those shoes, which is also interesting that the new Adidas shoe, like they proudly say it's good for one race. So like it makes no sense to me that because you're hearing some manufacturers that are saying that you should be able to get 500, you should feel good at least for 500 in a super shoe. And then we're seeing 26 miles from some super shoes. So jury is still out on it, quite honestly. And even like I did a talk recently on super shoes and like even doing some even nerdier in-depth stuff. There's just so much out there that is TBD on a lot of the super shoe technology. And even like, it'll be interesting to see going out in 5 years, what injuries look like from people that have been really into it. Are we going to start seeing way more Achilles injuries from people that are used to that snappy sensation on their shoe? Because that seems to be pretty common. People putting extra strain on their calf. Like I think we're seeing some of it now, but it'll be very interesting to see moving forward if we've seen a whole different injury path from people that are continually using these shoes. Because it's not natural, quite honestly. You know, that sensation, it's not a natural running form. And there's always going to be some pushback from our bodies when you're introducing something like that.
So that's another question I had. From a coaching perspective, I completely agree with you that a super shoe is not an everyday shoe for anybody. It shouldn't be. But I would also take the next step and say that a super shoe is not for every runner, depending on your form, depending obviously on what kind of terrain you're running on makes an impact too. But is there a runner that you would specifically not recommend runs in a super shoe at all? Or someone with a particular form or...
No, I mean, I'm always much more weary on injury history than anything else. That seems to be, and I don't want to harp back on the Achilles thing, but that is more of what I've seen people dealing with is high Achilles stuff with it. So somebody that comes in that has that kind of history, it's at least something to be weary of like, hey, this is a real possibility that you're going to aggravate something that may be a problem for you a while ago and it's been dormant for a while. You could re-aggravate that if you continually push it with that type of shoe like that. But for the most part, like when somebody's new into it, and I think that's everybody and everybody who has a new hobby. If somebody falls into a new hobby, you want to get all the latest and greatest. And I have a customer that comes to mind who I speak with ad nauseum about shoes in a good way. He's all in on running, and he has gone out and bought every type of super shoe, and he has already aggravated his Achilles. And we've had these conversations about like, why can't I run on it all the time? Why can't I run all the time? And it's hard because he's, you know, you see the data. He can say, I can go run in a pair of Brooks Ghosts, and I can go run in a pair of, you know, Hyperion Elites or something like that. That's a carbon plated version of a shoe like that. And it's so much faster. So why can't I do this all the time? But I think for long-term success in running, changing the variance of your speeds and where you're going and the type of running you're doing is going to make you a longer runner. And I think over time, consistency is going to be your friend in running more than like short burst stuff. And to me, the super shoe stuff is like not a shortcut, but like we're going to kind of jump over a couple steps in our progression to make, and the shoe is going to kind of pick up for some deficiencies that consistency could have made up for on its own. So I'm usually much more into with newer runners of like, why don't you focus on just getting more time on your feet as opposed to more speed under your foot?
Mm-hmm. Steve, do you see from a brand perspective, you have a customer that comes in, you ask the questions, you get them into a pair. Do you see a consumer gravitating to a brand, right? So, hey, I love Brooks. So every time I come in, I want Brooks. And let me tailor that around what I got going on. If it's like an ultra marathon or 5K, whatever. Tell us a little bit about brands. Like, is that something that you hear a consumer coming in, I want this brand? And what are the most popular brands out there now?
Yeah, we definitely have people that are brand specific, and that's fine too, because now brands are making so many different shoes. It used to not be such a wide breadth of product. You know, I harp back to Hoka just because it's a good example, but we've been carrying Hoka since 2014, and they only had a few shoes. Like their catalog was like 3 pages. You know, at one point Clifton was making like 40% of all Hoka sales were coming from one shoe. But now a lot of the brands are expanding out. And some people will say like, my foot is very good shaped for New Balance. The lasts that they use for New Balance just sort of gravitate well from my foot. So I tend to kind of stay in that. We push back a little bit on that just because I think that we have found, and research kind of backs it up, that like by changing things out, it's actually better to keep your foot guessing. We did a little thing recently about like we use glasses for contacts for context. But like if you wake up and you put your glasses on, by the end of the day, you take your glasses off, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm blind. But in the morning time when you wake up, you're like, I might be able to get away for the day without my glasses. I'm not so reliant on my glasses. But the more you wear your glasses, the more you're reliant on them. That same thing happens with brands and specific shoe models as well. It's like if you're used to the last of a Brooks or whatever, you sort of get stuck in that. You get kind of put in a box. So it's kind of important to sort of look outside of those brands and to see, if I've always been in this model and this brand, like maybe it wouldn't hurt. I know that I need a stability mid-cushion shoe that's worked for me. I should try a mid-cushion stability shoe from another brand to keep my foot sort of guessing on the drops and such that the shoe is doing, to keep my foot strong that way. Otherwise, your foot becomes sort of lazy and locked into that specific mold that a brand is using, and it can kind of put you into a corner longer down the roads. Yeah. As far as brands go, I mean, Hoka right now is by far the most walked in looking for. Um, and it's great, but it definitely becomes, like I said, it becomes a little bit of like that's great that you've heard great things, but it doesn't mean that's all you should try. And we sort of have a policy at the stores that even if somebody comes in and says like, I just need a new X brand, Clifton, blah, 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 that I'm going to make you try something else on when you're in the store, because you don't know unless you try it on. And I think we get those people that come in that have only been in brand X or model X. And when they can't find that, or if there's something happens, they twist their ankle, the shoe doesn't feel right. That's when you see that full-fledged panic of like long-term runners who are like, oh my God, I've been wearing the Brooks Adrenaline version 18 for 6 years. And I've hunted eBay and I've hunted every Amazon. They don't make it anymore. And I'm totally lost now. And because they've kind of got themselves stuck in that box, they can't get out of it. So like, variety is great. And I don't know if you were there when we did the event with Golden Harper, who founded Ultra, but Golden, he founded the brand. He's like just a prodigy when it comes to shoes, just a really interesting guy. But even the guy who makes Ultra shoes was like, don't always buy Ultra. He's like you should never just buy all the same ones. And he's the guy who made the shoes. And so like I always kind of hark back to that of like, he knows his stuff, and he is like, go into a shop. He's like, if somebody tells you that they are dead set on a neutral shoe, make them try on something with stability, because they don't know unless they know. And we have all these tools at our resources and all these great shoes. Like, don't be so lazy as to just say, here's that shoe. Let's talk about it. Let's try some other stuff while we're here. Let's hop on the treadmill and see how it feels in motion, because you're never going to know unless you pop it on your feet and go give it a try.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm totally curious from the nerd perspective, and actually I'd be interested to hear from each of you, not just Steve. For you personally, what is your current favorite trainer and your current favorite maybe speed shoe?
Well, because right now I would say like last month I did almost all of my miles on the trail. So my trainer is really my trail shoe. So most of my miles, my weekday miles, are in a pair of Hoka Speed Goats. It's a perfect example of sort of your question is, I have a shoe that I really like from Hoka called the Hoka Mafate Speed 4. I love it. But sometimes it almost feels like it's too easy, right? So I like that the Speed Goat is that perfect. It's not doing too much. You're having to put the effort in. You're having to work, and that's what it should be on my everyday speeds. My everyday mileage stuff shouldn't be any easier than it needs to be. I'm covering 2 hours this morning. It should be 2 hours of covering it and not letting the shoe help me as much as it can. If I'm going out and doing something faster, I'm doing stuff on the road. Like yesterday, I'm getting ready for this 5K, so I did some speed stuff, and I have faster shoes. But honestly, exactly what we're talking about is I've been doing it in the Brooks Hyperion Max. It's a higher cushion, sort of go fast shoe, but I have way faster training shoes for it. But I want to make it fast enough that it's a faster shoe than normal, but not so close to race day type shoe, which I'll wear something more carbon plated-y, something more super shoey for that race. I just want it to be fast enough that I know it's not a trainer, but not so easy that I'm going to be taking advantage of the shoe, and that I also will feel that much better on race day when I put on real fast shoes that I can all of a sudden find that other gear. So those are like, right now, I would say those are probably my two favorite shoes that I've been running in, is the Brooks Hyperion Max and just the regular old Speed Goat. Even though I've run a million miles in Speed Goats, it's just something familiar about it. I know exactly what I'm going to get out of that shoe. It's not overly complicated. It's just a great everyday trainer for what I do.
So Michelle, what are you running in right now? What's your go-to trainer and speed shoe at the moment?
So my go-to, I have two.
I won't ask you about trail shoes.
No, don't ask me about trail shoes. I have them. They've been used twice. So I have the Ultra Paradigms. I have 2 pairs of those. I rotate through the week, just different colors so I can tell which one I used last. And then Hoka's for my recovery runs. I have Hoka Arahis just for my math runs. And then my fast shoe is the Vanish Carbon. But I think I'm going to have to add the Tempo in now, because I just kind of wear it a few times before race day and that's it. So I might kind of start incorporating the Tempo now that you talked about it. So
I love that shoe. That's my favorite Ultra shoe.
Yeah. I mean,
the Tempo or the Vanish?
The Tempo.
Okay.
The Tempo.
Yeah,
I really like the Tempo.
I like my zero drops, but I mix it up with the Hoka a little bit. Just a little. So
how about you, Scott?
So for the trail, it's got to be the Hoka Mafate. Steve turned me on to that. That is just an incredible shoe. And then on the roads, I I rotate probably every day. If I'm doing something that's short and slow, it just could be like a Clifton. But again, this is for me on the feel. And I hope I get the name of the shoe right, but the Hoka, is it the Mach X?
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
that is one that I wear the most.
I love that shoe too.
Just it just feels great. I do have super shoes. I do have those, and that's I fell into the trap honestly of probably about, I don't know, a year and a half ago. I was wearing them too much, but now it's speed workout here or there. Yeah, that's my rotation.
Did you notice anything for you, like as far as injury stuff? You did.
In without getting into too much detail, my feet really could feel, I think, some issues. My Achilles weren't that bad. It was just more, there was some foot issues going on.
Stuff going on.
And I never didn't go to a doctor and really have it sit. But after kind of stopping that a little bit, I was like, okay, that was probably kind of a theme here. But I did notice a little bit. It's hard because those things feel so good.
Yeah.
But it is true. I think, pulling it out and bringing them out when they're needed is more advisable. Yeah.
They are fun.
Yeah.
They are fun, right?
They're fun.
We all like to run fast, and there's nothing better than going and running fast. But at least on a personal, for me, just as a runner, not even as a store person, but the last couple of years, like the best things I've done was I got off Strava because I had been coming off of a bad injury, and I kept trying to race my old self or Pat, or like you're just trying to see what everybody's up to. And it became, I'm a super competitive person, and it became competitive with myself and pushing myself too much when I didn't need to be. And then that would almost lead you to wear a super shoe too. If you're like, I got to be keeping up with the Joneses, and that guy just ran this, and I need to make sure so it became these two bad things in my life. So I was like, well, getting off Strava actually made me think more thoughtfully of like my training as a long-term and not as a short-term, of like, I'm building for I always say I want to be running till the day I die. So if I'm injured, that's not going to happen. So I need to be doing the things that can help. So getting off the road, getting on the trail, getting out of the super shoe stuff more frequently, getting off of Strava, and looking for that lifelong, long, slow game, like how I used to be, has worked out well for me. But I kind of needed to shake it up a little bit, because you fall in that super shoe trap. It's very easy to.
Lauren, what
I
are you
think
wearing?
there's something really.
Yeah, I was curious on
I
that.
think-
You haven't answered the question.
I think there's something really, really rewarding, though, to the super shoe discussion about doing most of your training in a non-carbon, non-super shoe, and developing the confidence that your legs can do what you're trying to do on their own. And then at the end of your training cycle, slipping into a super shoe for a couple workouts and seeing that, then you get that reward, that extra pop, that little extra boost. But knowing that your body and your legs can do it on their own first, I think that delayed gratification of pushing it toward the end of your cycle is powerful. Okay, so I do love Hoka. Hoka Mach 5. I think I have every color now. I think I've rotated through. So hopefully they come out with something new here soon, because I'm at the end of the line. So that's my daily trainer for most runs. The Tecton X is actually my favorite trail shoe. I really like, it's a lower profile. So it does have has 2 carbon plates in there. But I don't feel like I notice it very much. What I like most about the shoe is that it's a lower profile. It's not the thick stack. So it's a little kind of more minimalist for a trail Hoka shoe. And then my racer, for a long time, I was Nike Vaporfly was my go-to carbon. But I just started trying out the Rocket X2. I had the original Hoka Rocket and didn't love it. It was okay, but I didn't love it. But the Rocket X2, I'm really enjoying. It's got a lot of pop and a lot of responsiveness, but it's a lot more comfortable on my foot. So I'm not itching to rip the shoes off my feet at the end of a marathon or the end of a long day out. So I'm enjoying those right now too.
The Mach 6 comes out in like March. It is so nice. You're gonna like that if you've been in the Mach 5 for as long as you have. The Mach 6 is gonna be really nice.
Okay, well, get ready because I need every color as we go through the year. I mean, really, if I show you my closet, I have every version of the 5. And I mean, I run a lot of miles, so I do,
Sure.
you know, in order to rotate them and make sure that I'm keeping my feet healthy. But yeah, I'm excited for that. Good. I'm glad to hear it. I haven't tried the X yet. I need to give those a try too. The
That's
Mach
a,
X.
it's very nice. It's a very nice shoe, and and like I have my one good friend. He did that for his training shoe. He ran the Berlin Marathon, got his BQ, and he was using that sort of as like a hybrid shoe. He's like, I don't want to spend a ton of money on a shoe that I'm only going to use for like a race here or there. I want something I can train in. And that way, the Mach X is perfect for that. Like if you are trying to find a shoe that you could do as your speed workout shoe, a longer distance shoe, and a race shoe, and you don't want to necessarily get into a carbon plated, the Rocket or the Mach X is perfect for that because it has just a P-Bax plate to it. It's a plastic plate, not carbon.
Well, and pretty much every brand has a similar concept going on right now, right? That they've
Mm-hmm.
got their sort of their speed shoe that's that intermediate step before you get to their carbon shoe.
Yep, yeah, we're definitely seeing a little bit more of that, and we're seeing a lot of like again that performance trainer is the new emerging category that we're seeing. I just saw a bunch of stuff from Mizuno this week for 2024-25, and they've got another great shoe in that category. So we're going to start to see that as a lot more options in that. And if there are people that are like I said, who are stay on a budget because they're expensive shoes, but like you could use that one shoe to make for your workout and your race day shoe, and it'll have some form. The one shoe I just saw this week was a nylon plate. So the carbon plate is a lot of times it bumps it to like that next an extra stratosphere on price. So finding a shoe that has like a form of a plate and good midsole, but in that 170 to 185 range, I think is where we're going to see a lot of stuff next year coming out.
Yeah.
Good to know. I want to, before we shift topics, I know Scott's getting antsy there. He's got to jump off the call. So I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that we let you go before we get too involved into another topic.
Yeah.
So I told you, yeah.
No. I'm going to hear a lot of yapping with you and me on the track on Wednesday, Steve. So, but thanks for chatting with us, and
Yeah,
I'll
man.
talk to you soon.
Sounds good, buddy.
All right.
See you, Scott.
Scott.
Thank
Bye.
you. So, shifting gears a little bit, Steve, and I think if I'm being honest, this whole conversation has kind of already answered the question about, you know, why shop at a running specialty store as opposed to going to a Dick's or a superstore. Again, like I said, I think this conversation has answered that, and you're getting so much of a different experience. But just from your perspective, why shop at a specialty store instead?
Well, I could give selfishly, we really do try to do our best to like bring people in on the community side of the running. I think that's like one of the big benefits of whether you're local in Westminster or wherever you are, find that local shop of like, I would say that, and not just on our side, but I follow so many other stores is like, I think that runners in general are really good in the community. And I think if you look at running shops across the country compared to like, I don't know, whatever, an eyeglass store. The amount of like community things that we do is really important. Supporting a local running shop is supporting your community because we're sponsoring the races. We're helping organize stuff. We're helping people lose weight, perhaps. Like I know all the running stores that I'm friendly with. We donate shoes that are used to schools and such. Like we kind of are doing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. I think that I think we are very sort of boots on the ground when it comes to a lot of people's health stuff. So I think we're a little more tuned into our community just because of the conversations that we have. The nice thing with shopping in a shop like ours and like running shops in general is we don't have any say on our pricing. I think that some people will walk into our shop, and I think again, selfishly, I think we have a very pretty shop. I think aesthetically we have like a nice vibe in there. And I think if you go into a shop that kind of has a vibe like ours, or even just any like high boutique, you walk in and immediately assume that things are going to be very expensive there. But like we have no control of that. Whether you get a Brooks Ghost from me or from Dick's or from Brooks, the pricing is the exact same. So like you'll come in and like we'll spend 45 minutes with you and you're not paying anything extra from that. We're not flipping the iPad around for a 25% tip. We're like, we're in on it. We're feeling your toe and we're all in on it. And it's not costing you any bit more, but you're going to have a much better experience. And we're going to hopefully eliminate some of those returns. There's not that commission-based feel. And one of my current employees now worked at a box shoe store for 2 years. And he said after 1 week, he learned more about shoes at Run More than he did for 2 years at the store he was at. He said, he's like, in hindsight, they literally just kind of showed you how to work the computers and everything. And they just said, you're on the running shoe side. There you go. It's like there's not a class. Like I couldn't tell the difference between this shoe and this shoe. It's like I did it for 2 years. It's like they just don't, that's not their focus. Their focus is volume, where ours is long-term health. And I think like our business survives on people having a good experience and coming back and back and back, because the average consumer for Run Specialty visits a store once every 214 days. That's our average customer, every 214 days. So we got to make sure we get it right, because if we don't, then you'll probably go somewhere else. They're just going on volume of people coming and going through the mall or whatever it may be. They don't really have that same need necessarily. Like we want to make sure we do it right the first time. So we'd spend more time with you to give you a better experience so that you come back and see us in 214 days.
Yeah, I've got to say, like my own experience with you was a game changer, because, you know, as a newer runner, when I started as an adult going to a big box store. I remember walking in saying like how many miles I ran a week, which really wasn't much. And the guy going, oh my gosh, I guess this shoe. You know, and that was it. And that's the shoe I wore for like 4 years until I came into your store and I was like, whoa, this is like completely wrong. But like, you know, it's a huge difference. It's intimidating, but like it was the best, you know, it was time well spent because it was truly personal. And, you know, it does change your running trajectory. I feel like once you get that into that shoe and you know exactly what you need and get coached, it's really coaching for shoes. Like you're coached on, this is what you need for what you're doing today. You know, it's like you do the same thing we do, except with shoes. You're looking at the whole person, what you're doing, where do you want to go, and let me help you find the right stuff. It's really worth it.
And that's and that's exactly the not just where are you now, but where do you want to be? Where, you know, if we zoom forward 500 miles, are you still doing 2 days a week, or are you aspiring to do 5 days? You know, like those are important conversations to have. And when everything is just either based on price or color or what's available at that shop, like you really are kind of pigeonholing and limiting what you're looking at there. So there's a lot more broad questions that need to go into finding the right shoes.
Yeah.
If I can just shout out for a minute, one of the things that is particularly unique about what you're doing at Run More is, so, you know, obviously we've talked a lot about the brick and mortar store and when someone comes into your store, the questions you're asking, the experience they're getting, but you also go a step above and beyond. And with your online store, I want to make sure to mention that you do partner with the Run Squad and very graciously offer a discount to our team, which is wonderful. But what is above and beyond about that is that you've also made yourself available to our athletes who don't live near you, because probably most of them don't. We have athletes that are all over the country, all over the mid-Atlantic, and you have made yourself accessible via email so that when they have all of these same questions that someone walking into your store would have, you can go through that with them virtually and help them find the right shoe for them without ever setting foot in your store at all. And that's not something that you see at running specialty stores usually, unless you're walking into the building. And I think that that is really unique and special. And I know there's been a lot of athletes from our team that you have helped in just that way. And I assume that that's not even just for our team, that's just what you do when someone has a question and they need some help. And that is really unique about what you're doing specifically at Run More.
I appreciate it. Yeah, especially like when COVID happened and it's just the work, you know, like you're so lucky to kind of get through all that. But like when all that was going down and we were like, you know, being told like you need to shut your store down and nobody can come in. Hey, the bike store on the corner can stay open for business, but your store has to close because you are. What was the terrible word that they were throwing around there? What's the word that you're not? Non-essential. My shop was non-essential. Oh. And, you know, like it's essential to me and my family, you know, but we were non-essential. So like we had always been trying to do the best that we can with making sure that people could always feel comfortable. Like we were setting up Zoom appointments and doing that kind of, we're just trying to keep that open mindset of like, wherever you guys are, like, you know, I do Zoom stuff with customers, or I'll do stuff where people send me videos of them walking and such and kind of talk it out. And it's a big part of what we do now. And even like, you know, on our YouTube channel, answering questions for that, because I think that's important. And quite honestly, like, you know, the amount of views we get per people coming and buying, it's very small, but like if my goal is more people running, whether it's through Run More or anywhere. So like, if I can just give them some advice and that they can find this thing, because like, not just because I love to run, there's nothing better for just mental health. You know, it's something that we all struggle with in our own ways. And like, I know what it means for me. And so I look at anybody that like maybe there's something going on that I don't know about. So keeping them healthy means keeping them like in a good mental state. Like that's a big part of what I'm doing with it too. So like if we can just, whether it's from me or pointing you to go buy at another shop, but that will make you a lifelong runner and let you have all the amazing benefits mentally and physically of running. Like that's what it's all about.
That's awesome. That's what the sport is about.
That's exactly
what,
what the
the
sport's about.
community as a whole. Yeah.
That's
I love that.
exactly, it's exactly right. Yep.
I feel like you have evolved the Carroll County local running community a lot since your store has opened. I mean, do you see the effects of that? Like I feel like you've created or unified a community out here that wasn't there before.
I do, and I really appreciate that. We've tried. It's it's work. It's work. It's work to kind of do that. But like we had group runs starting out when we first opened. When I'd have 3 people show up, but we just kind of you keep doing it and keep doing the we're not intimidating. Like we're the friendliest group of people out there. And like if you want to walk, that's totally fine too. Just grab a friend and get moving, because that's what it's all about, is just staying moving. And so many like just problems and health and life and mental and everything, like once you get stagnant and you just stop, things get worse. So if you can find a way and find a friend, and like the guy I ran with this morning, he met his wife at one of our pub runs. They met at a pub run. They got married. They have kids now, which is really neat. Like that's a really cool, that's like the coolest
awesome.
thing ever. And I love that when people say I have customers that come in and say, how I found your shop is I was driving and I saw like 50 people running down the road. And I realized, what the hell is that? I did some research and found out you had a group run and I wanted to be a part of that. So now I'm here to shop and I want to be part of the next group run. Like, that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's neat.
That's very cool. So to wrap us up a little bit here, tell us whether someone lives locally to you in the Westminster, Maryland, Pennsylvania area or not, where can people find Run More?
So we are in downtown Westminster, which is just a beautiful, sleepy town, 1 marathon south of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. But our website is Let's Run More. We tried to buy Run More, but when we were opening, somebody squatted on our domain and tried to resell it to me. So everything we have is branded as Let's Run More because GoDaddy sold our search data. Anyway, our YouTube channel is a great way to find shoe stuff information. And one of the things we really try with our I call them our shoe reviews, but really they're just more educational things, because for the most part, like what I run in might be very different from what you guys run in. So there's no point doing videos where I'm like, this shoe sucks, because it might be perfect for somebody else. But if you're just looking to more in-depth information about why you may pick one shoe over the other, like our YouTube channel is a pretty good place to be. And again, you can always shoot us emails, and we're pretty darn good about getting back on shoe related questions. So if anybody needs to reach us, I'm at steve@letsrunmore.com. You can always shoot me an email if any shoe related questions, and I'll do my best to get back to you and at least point you in the right direction to the best of my ability.
And YouTube is at Let's Run More.
My YouTube, I think, is actually Run More. As soon as I said that, I was like, I think I gave bad information. My YouTube is Run More, but everything else from Instagram, Facebook, website, online store is letsrunmore.com. I know, it's so stupid.
And just like to make sure everyone knows, it's Let's Run MOORE.com.
Yeah.
So if you're if you're listening, that's
two O's like my last name. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is so fun. It's so funny. Yes. I'm 2 O's.
So to make you feel better, you can find us at moremilestogo.com, but all of our social media handles are More Miles Run Coaching, or you can find us at the More Miles Podcast. So we've got 3 different names in there that are pretty much about the same, but not quite.
Just different enough.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Well, Steve, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. I learned a lot on this episode. Also,
I'm so appreciative. I'm so flattered you guys invited me. I really am.
Yeah, this was like
all right
class. It was amazing.
Sorry, I talk a lot. I'm sorry.
No, this was fantastic. It was a ton of information. So you can find this podcast and all of our podcasts on Spotify at the More Miles Podcast, or wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can find the video version on YouTube at More Miles Run Coaching. All right. Thank you guys. Have a good one.
Thank you guys. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.